For 5 years, I handed Vanessa every dollar I earned. $900 a month at 67. Crawling under porches and sanding floors until my shoulders locked up. I told myself it was for Jamal. For Dorothy, who died believing our son was gone. Then, one Tuesday, Cecilia grabbed my wrist on the stairwell and whispered, "Eugene, stop paying that woman. I saw something on the third-floor camera." That's when my whole world cracked open. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Before the story unfolds further, feel free to share in the comments where you're watching from. It means more than you think. If you enjoy thoughtful, character-driven stories, consider liking and subscribing. Please note, some elements are shaped for narrative clarity, while the ideas explored are meant to spark reflection. My knees ached as I climbed the staircase of 847 Carr Avenue. 3 flights, 52 steps. I had counted them so many times the number lived in my bones. At 67, my body had its own opinions about staircases, especially after spending 6 hours on my hands and knees resurfacing Mrs. Bellamy's hardwood floors 2 streets over. But it was Friday. The first Friday of November. And first Fridays meant one thing only: payment day. The envelope inside my jacket pressed against my ribs like a guilty secret. $900 in crisp bills, withdrawn from the bank that morning. $900 that could have fixed the leak in my roof, could have replaced the worn brake pads on my truck, could have bought Jamal that bicycle he kept circling in the hardware store catalog. Instead, it was going upstairs. Like it always did. 59 months. 59 envelopes. $53,100 total. And I could account for every single one, because each one cost me something. A week of crawling under houses. A week of sawdust in my lungs and ache in my wrists. A week of pretending my body was still 30 years younger than the calendar insisted it was. The hallway on the 3rd floor smelled like fried okra and old plaster. Someone's television hummed behind a door. The carpet under my boots was worn thin in the center. A path I had helped create with my monthly pilgrimages. I stopped at the door, marked 309, caught my breath, and knocked. 3 times. Always 3. Silence. Then the shuffle of feet. The deadbolt turned, with a sound I knew better than my own heartbeat. The door opened just enough for Vanessa's face to appear behind the security chain. 36 years old, but carrying something heavier than age in the lines around her mouth. Her hair pulled back tight, dark circles beneath her eyes like bruises that never healed. Eugene. Not a greeting. A statement. Like confirming something she already expected and did not particularly want. "Vanessa," I said, keeping my voice easy. "Brought this month's." I pulled the envelope from my jacket and held it where she could see. Her hand came through the gap, fingers closing around the paper without touching mine. She pulled it back through the crack, like a snake retracting into its hole. "You're late," she said. "It's past 5. Had a flooring job across town. Took longer than I figured." She did not respond to that. I heard the soft rustle of her checking the envelope. Not counting, just confirming the weight of it. "Is Jamal home?" I asked, leaning slightly, trying to see past her into the dim apartment. Thought I might say goodnight. "Been a few weeks since I've seen him. He's doing homework." Her voice was flat, final. "He needs to concentrate." The television was on behind her. Not homework sounds, cartoon sounds, bright voices and sound effects. "It's Friday evening," I said gently. "Maybe just 5 minutes. I won't stay long." "Not tonight, Eugene." Something flickered across her face. Not the usual coldness. Something quicker. Nerves. Her eyes darted sideways, then back to me. "I'll tell him you stopped by." I opened my mouth to push, just once more. Just gently. But before I could speak, I heard it. A laugh. Not from the television. Not from a cartoon character or a game show host. A real laugh, low and deep, rolling from somewhere inside that apartment like thunder moving across a summer field. A man's laugh. Relaxed, comfortable. The kind of sound a person makes when they are home, truly home, in a place that belongs to them. I have spent 43 years as a carpenter. I have spent decades listening to the difference between hollow walls and solid ones, between the echo of an empty room and the warmth of an occupied space. I know what a voice sounds like coming through speakers, and I know what it sounds like coming from a living throat 10 feet away. That laugh came from a person standing inside Vanessa's apartment. My hand was still raised, frozen mid-gesture. Vanessa's eyes went wide for just a fraction of a second before the mask slid back into place. "Good night, Eugene," she said quickly. The door closed. The deadbolt slammed home. I stood there on that landing, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, staring at the chipped paint on door 309. My heart was doing something strange, not racing exactly, more like stumbling, tripping over itself, trying to find a rhythm that made sense, because I knew that laugh. I had heard it at my dinner table for 36 years. I had heard it echo through my workshop on Saturday mornings. I had heard it rumble through the phone from fishing docks and job sites and highway rest stops across half the country. I knew that laugh. The way I knew the grain of white oak. The way I knew the smell of cedar shavings. The way I knew my own name. But it could not be. Because the man who owned that laugh was dead. Had been dead for 5 years. Was buried at Elmwood Cemetery in a bronze urn I had picked out myself from a catalog a stranger handed me on the worst Tuesday of my life. I turned and walked down those 52 steps on legs that felt borrowed from someone else. Each step echoed in the stairwell like a question I was not ready to ask. Outside, the November air hit my face, sharp and cold, carrying the smell of dead leaves and distant rain. Memphis. In autumn. The streetlights were flickering on along Carr Avenue, painting the sidewalk in pools of orange. Everything looked the same as it had an hour ago. The same row houses pressed together, like tired old men holding each other up. The same cracked sidewalks, the same sky. But nothing was the same. Because upstairs, behind a locked door, in an apartment I had been paying for with my broken body for 5 years, someone was laughing with my dead son's voice. The walk home felt like wading through deep water. 2 blocks south on Carr Avenue, left on Evelyn, and there it was. 1614. The Crawford House. 3 generations had lived under that roof. My grandfather built the original frame in 1941. My father added the second story in 63. I rebuilt the porch and installed the kitchen cabinets Dorothy picked from a catalog in 91. Every board in that house knew my hands. I did not bother with the porch light. Just pushed through the front door into the kind of silence that only exists in a home where someone used to sing. Dorothy used to sing while she cooked. Gospel mostly, sometimes Motown when she was in a mood. The kitchen still smelled faintly of her lemon cleaner, even though no one had used it in 5 years. I sank into my armchair by the front window. Her chair sat across from mine. Empty. The cushion still holding the faint impression of her shape. I never sat in it. Never moved it. Some spaces belong to people even after they leave. Dorothy's photograph watched me from the mantel. Her at 62. Laughing. Silver threads in her dark hair. Jamal's 4th birthday party. Paper streamers in the magnolia tree she planted the year he was born. That was the last birthday she saw him celebrate. "Made this month's payment, baby," I said to the empty room. 59 down. 1 to go. It had been 5 years and 7 months since Raymond Gill showed up on my porch. A Tuesday in March. Thin man. Brown suit that did not fit right. Said he was from Gulf Coast Maritime Processing, the fishing company Marcus worked for out of Biloxi. There was an accident, he said. Eyes fixed on Dorothy's braided rug. A shrimping vessel in rough waters. Your son fell overboard during a storm. By the time the crew pulled him out, he opened his briefcase. Death certificate. Company paperwork. Dorothy was standing in the kitchen doorway. The sound she made was not a scream. Something lower. Something from a place beneath language. The sound of a mother recognizing something she cannot survive. I caught her before she hit the floor. Marcus was gone. Our only child. 36 years old. The boy who learned to measure twice and cut once at my workbench. The young man who kissed his mother goodbye at the Memphis airport with a duffel bag and a promise to call every Sunday. The months after blurred into gray. Dorothy stopped eating. Lost 25 pounds. Forgot her pills, her keys. Which day it was. She started talking to the urn. I would come home and find her sitting in this room, the bronze urn on the table, telling it about Jamal's school, about the magnolia blooming, about how much she missed him. Every night, talking to it like Marcus could hear. On September 8th, I found her on the kitchen floor. Left side slack. Words garbled. Massive stroke. She died 3 days later, without waking. Her last clear words. Tell Marcus I love him. When you visit his grave Sunday. She died believing her son watched over her from heaven. The doctors said cerebrovascular accident. I knew better. 7 months of grief crushed her heart until there was nothing left to run on. My Dorothy died of a broken heart. Love was the weapon. Grief was the wound. Our dead son was the bullet. I was still wearing my funeral suit when Vanessa came by. October 3rd. She wore black. Jamal, 4 years old, clung to her hand. Eugene, we need to talk about Marcus's debt. She laid out papers at my kitchen table. Bank statements. Collection letters with red stamps. Before the fishing job, Marcus had borrowed $54,000. Loan sharks. Friends. Credit cards past their limits. They're calling, Vanessa said. Her hands shaking. Threatening. Saying they know where Jamal goes to school. She looked at the boy playing on Dorothy's rug. What was I supposed to do? Let dangerous people threaten my grandson? Let the only piece of Marcus left be swallowed by his mistakes? I agreed. $900 a month. 60 months. I would be 72 when it ended. But Jamal would be safe. I told myself this was love. I told myself this was what fathers do. I set Dorothy's photograph back on the mantel and looked at her smile, dim in the streetlight filtering through the curtain. I heard something tonight, baby. I whispered. Something I can't explain. That laugh. Deep and rolling and easy. Coming from inside Vanessa's apartment, like it belonged there. Like the man who owned it had never drowned. Never been sealed in bronze and buried beneath Memphis clay. I tried to push it away. Told myself I was an old man hearing things. That grief plays tricks after 5 years of loneliness. But I had spent 43 years training my ears, listening for the creak of a bad joist, the whisper of a crack in a beam, the difference between solid and hollow. That laugh was solid. Real. Alive. I sat in the dark for a long time. One more payment. One more month. And the debt would be done. Then maybe Vanessa would let me be a grandfather again. Maybe I could teach Jamal how to plane a board smooth, how to join 2 pieces so tight you cannot see the seam. But the unease followed me upstairs. Sat on my chest in bed. Heavy. Patient. Because deep down, beneath the grief and exhaustion, I knew that laugh. And knowing it meant everything I believed for 5 years might be the most expensive lie ever told. Saturday morning came gray and cool, the kind of November day that smells like wood smoke and wet pavement. I was up on Mrs. Robinson's porch by 7:30, replacing a section of railing that had rotted through from years of Memphis rain. $50 for 2 hours of work. Not much. But $50 was $50. And it kept my hands busy, which kept my mind from circling back to that laugh. I had not slept. Every time I closed my eyes, the sound returned. Deep. Easy. Rolling through the dark, like it had every right to exist in a place where only grief was supposed to live. I told myself a dozen times it meant nothing. A television turned up too loud. A neighbor visiting. A friend of Vanessa's. There were explanations. Reasonable ones. I just could not make any of them stick. The railing was white oak. Good wood. I had salvaged it from a demolition job 2 months back, planed it smooth in my garage, and cut it to fit Mrs. Robinson's porch dimensions. The grain was tight and even. Oak does not lie. It shows you exactly what it is. I wished people were the same. I was fitting the last spindle into the top rail, tapping it gently with a rubber mallet, when I heard footsteps on the sidewalk below. Quick steps. Purposeful. I glanced down. Cecilia Washington stood at the base of the porch steps, wringing her hands inside the sleeves of her cardigan. 70 years old, retired nurse from Baptist Memorial, lived on the second floor of 847 Carr Avenue, directly below Vanessa. She had sharp eyes and a sharper memory. 32 years of night shifts in the emergency room had taught her to notice things other people missed. "Eugene," she said, her voice low. Not a greeting. An urgency. "Morning, Cecilia." I set down the mallet. "Give me just a second here. It's important." The way she said it made me stop. Not insistent. Afraid. Cecilia Washington was not a woman who frightened easily. I had seen her stare down a stray dog twice her size without flinching. But right now, her hands would not stop moving. I climbed down from the porch and stood in front of her. The street was quiet. A few kids riding bikes 2 houses down. Mrs. Robinson's wind chimes tinkling softly behind me. Normal Saturday morning sounds. "What's going on?" I asked. Cecilia looked up and down the sidewalk, then stepped closer. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "It's about Vanessa's apartment. About last night." My chest tightened. "What about it?" I couldn't sleep. My hip was acting up, so around 2 in the morning I went out on my balcony for air. She pulled the cardigan tighter around herself like the memory carried its own chill. I heard the stairwell door open. Footsteps coming up. Someone going past my floor, heading up to the 3rd. "Could have been anybody," I said. But my pulse was already climbing. "Eugene." She gripped my forearm. Her fingers were stronger than they looked. This man walked different. His left leg didn't move right. The knee buckled inward with every step, just slightly. And his left shoulder dipped down to compensate. Like that side of his body was carrying something the other side wasn't. The oak railing behind me felt suddenly far away. The whole morning felt far away. I was standing in bright November sunshine, but something cold was moving through my chest. "Lots of people have bad knees," I said. My voice came out rough. "Wrong. Not like this." Cecilia's eyes locked on mine. Steady. Certain. The eyes of a woman who had spent 3 decades reading bodies for a living. "Eugene, I lived in that building for 12 years. I watched your boy walk past my door every single day before he left for that fishing job. Coming home from work. Going out with Vanessa. Carrying groceries up those stairs. I know how Marcus walked. That hitch in his left step. That shoulder dropping. I'd recognize it anywhere. Cecilia. Marcus passed 5 years ago. We got the death certificate. We buried him." "Did you?" she asked softly. "Did you see him? Did anyone actually see him?" The question landed in my stomach like a stone dropped into still water. We had not. Raymond Gill had brought paperwork and condolences. We took it at face value. Because who questions a death certificate? Who imagines their own son would do something like that? "That's not possible," I said. But the words had no weight behind them. "There's more." Cecilia had not released my arm. This man didn't knock. He pulled out a key, had it ready in his hand like he'd done it 1,000 times, opened that door, and walked right in. 2 in the morning, Eugene. Like he lived there. The wind chimes sang behind me. A mockingbird called from the elm tree across the street. Normal sounds. The world continuing. As if nothing had changed. "The building put in that security camera last month," Cecilia said. "On the landing between 2nd and 3rd floor. For those break-ins back in September. Remember?" I remembered. I had helped the maintenance man mount the bracket. drilled the holes myself because his hands shook too bad to hold the drill steady. The footage saves digitally, she continued. Keeps weeks of recordings. Eugene, you should see what's on it. I can't just demand security footage, I said. Then find someone who can. Her voice shifted. Harder now. The nurse's voice. The one that tells you the truth, even when you do not want it. Because I'm telling you, that man walked exactly like Marcus. The left knee, the shoulder, the way he leans away from the bad side. Exactly. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter. Almost gentle. Dorothy deserved better than this, Eugene. If something wrong is happening in that building, she would want you to know. Dorothy's name in Cecilia's mouth hit me somewhere I was not prepared. I looked at this woman, 70 years old, standing on a Saturday sidewalk with nothing to gain from lying. She had buried her own husband a decade ago. She went to church every Sunday. She had no reason to make this up. I'll check, I said. Promise me. I promise. Cecilia nodded once, then turned and walked back toward the building. I watched her go. This small, sturdy woman, carrying an observation that might be a grenade or might be nothing at all. I turned back to collect my tools. The mallet, the chisel, the level. My hands were shaking so bad the chisel slipped from my fingers and clattered against the porch boards. I bent down to pick it up and stayed there for a moment, crouched on one knee, staring at the grain of the oak I had just installed. Tight, even, honest. If Cecilia was right, then Dorothy died for nothing. She cried over that urn for 6 months, talked to it, whispered to it, poured her heart into it, until her heart had nothing left, and the person she was grieving was alive, 45 minutes away by car if the numbers on the highway signs meant anything. Walking through Vanessa's door with his own key at 2 a.m, while I handed over $900 every month like a fool. I stood up slowly. My knees cracked. The morning sun was warm on my face, but I could not feel it. I needed to call Leroy. Leroy Jackson, my oldest friend, 40 years. Retired insurance investigator. If anyone knew how to pull footage and follow a thread without raising alarms, it was Leroy. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over his name in my contacts. Once I made this call, there was no going back. No pretending I had not heard what I heard. No pretending Cecilia was mistaken. I pressed the button. It rang twice. Eugene? Leroy's voice, deep and unhurried. Kind of early for a Saturday. I need your help, I said. Something's wrong. And I need to know the truth before it's too late. Leroy Jackson lived in a narrow shotgun house on Young Avenue in the Cooper-Young district. 15 minutes from my place if traffic was kind. I had helped him replace the gutters 3 years back, and he had helped me sand Dorothy's kitchen floor the year before she died. That was the nature of 40 years of friendship. You show up. You do not ask why. You just bring the right tools. By the time I arrived Sunday afternoon with 2 coffees from the Java Cabana on the corner, he had his laptop open on the kitchen table and a USB drive plugged into the side. The kitchen smelled like the chicory coffee he brewed too strong and the old newspapers he never threw away. Leroy was 69, thick through the shoulders. With a gray beard he kept trimmed short, and reading glasses he refused to wear in public. 26 years as an insurance fraud investigator before he retired. The man could find a lie buried under 10 layers of paperwork. My contact at SecureView pulled 3 months, Leroy said, gesturing to the chair across from him. September through November. Building manager owes him a favor from a water damage claim last year. I sat down slowly. The coffee stayed in my hand, forgotten. The laptop screen showed a grid of dates and timestamps. Rows of files organized by week. Where do you want to start? Leroy asked. November 6th, I said. The night after I made this month's payment, Leroy clicked. The screen went dark for a moment, then video appeared. Black and white. Grainy, but clear enough. The timestamp glowed in the upper corner. November 6th, 2024, 1:47 in the morning. The camera showed the landing between the second and third floors. Stairs visible on the left. The edge of Vanessa's door just barely in frame on the right. The hallway was empty. That dead-of-night stillness when even the building itself seems to hold its breath. "Here," Leroy said quietly. At 1:49, a shadow appeared at the bottom of the frame. Someone climbing the stairs, moving carefully, like a man who did not want to wake the world. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. The figure rose into view. Average height, dark jacket, baseball cap pulled low over his face, a cloth mask covering everything below his eyes. He moved with deliberate quiet, each step placed with intention. But it was the walk that seized my chest and would not let go. The right foot landed smooth, heel to toe, even and steady, but the left foot dragged. Not dramatically, just enough. It did not quite clear the step before coming down, and when the weight shifted onto that side, the whole body adjusted. The left shoulder dropped 2 degrees. The torso tilted slightly right to compensate. A hitch. A rhythm that was wrong in exactly the way I had watched it be wrong for 8 years. "Jesus," I whispered. The man reached Vanessa's door at 1:51. No hesitation. No knock. His hand went to his jacket pocket, pulled out a key ring, selected one without looking, and opened the door in a single fluid motion. Inside. Door closed. Timestamp 1:51 and 14 seconds. 2 seconds from key to entry. Like muscle memory. Like coming home. "Run it again," I said. Leroy played it 3 more times. Each time the same details screamed at me. The left foot not quite lifting. The weight shifting wrong. The shoulder dropping to accommodate what the leg could not carry. 2016, I heard myself say. Pickup basketball game at the Midtown Y. Marcus went up for a rebound and came down on another player's foot. Tore the ACL in his left knee. Dr. Simmons did the surgery. Put in a graft. But the knee was never the same. Never bent quite right after that. And his body compensated. Left shoulder bearing what the knee couldn't. Leroy's expression had not changed, but I could see his jaw working beneath his beard. He clicked to another file. October 4th. The night after my October payment. Same time window. 2:23 in the morning. Same figure. Same limp. Same key. Same door. September 5th. 1:58 a.m. Same. August 6th. 2:11 a.m. Same. July. June. May. Month after month. The same man appearing between 1 and 3 in the morning, always the night after I climbed those stairs and handed Vanessa $900. Always the same walk. Always the same key. Always disappearing behind that door like smoke. Every single month, Eugene. Leroy's voice was measured. Careful. The voice of a man who had delivered bad news professionally for a quarter century. The pattern doesn't break. Not once in 3 months of footage. I stared at the frozen image on the screen. The figure caught mid-stride on the landing. Left foot hovering above the step. Shoulder already beginning its drop. That unmistakable hitch. When Marcus was recovering from the surgery, I said, my voice sounding far away, he stayed at our house for 4 months. I watched him walk from the bedroom to the bathroom 100 times a day. Watched him try to hide the limp. Watched him get angry when Dorothy fussed over him. That exact compensation. The way the shoulder carries what the knee refuses. I know that pattern, like I know the grain of red oak. That's your professional assessment? Leroy asked. Not doubting. Confirming. That's my son's walk, I said. I built that boy. I know how he moves. Leroy closed the laptop slowly. The kitchen went quiet. Just the refrigerator humming, and the sound of a neighbor's dog barking somewhere down the block. Sunday sounds. Normal sounds. But nothing was normal. 5 years. 1,826 days since Raymond Gill stood in my living room with his paperwork and his sympathy. Since Dorothy collapsed in my arms. Since we buried that urn at Elmwood. Since I started climbing those 52 stairs with $900 pressed against my chest like a wound. And the man I had been mourning was alive. Walking through a door 2 floors above my friend Cecilia at 2 in the morning with his own key. Coming and going like a ghost that never had the decency to stay dead. Eugene, Leroy said quietly, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. If Marcus is alive, then what exactly has Vanessa been spending your money on? The question hung between us like cigarette smoke. Thick. Bitter. Impossible to wave away. I did not have an answer. But I was going to find one. We follow her, I said. We follow the money. And we find out where my son has been hiding for 5 years. Leroy nodded. He pulled a yellow notepad from beneath a stack of newspapers and uncapped a pen. Then, we start tomorrow, Monday morning. And we don't stop until we know everything. I looked at the closed laptop. Somewhere inside that machine, frozen in black and white, my son was climbing stairs he should never have been able to climb. And somewhere in Memphis, maybe 2 blocks from where I sat, the woman I had been paying every month for 5 years was keeping a secret worth far more than $54,000. Tomorrow, I agreed. And for the first time since Friday night, the weight on my chest was not grief. It was purpose. Tuesday afternoon, I called Vanessa and told her I wanted to pick Jamal up from school, take him for barbecue, spend a few hours with my grandson. She was quiet on the line for a long moment, the kind of silence that carries calculation behind it. You don't need to do that, she said finally. I want to, I replied, keeping my voice easy, casual, like a grandfather who missed his grandson, and nothing more. I'll bring him back by 7. Another pause. Then, fine. He gets out at 3:15. Prescott Elementary, on Poplar. I know where it is, I said. I had driven past it every week for 5 years without being invited inside. At 3:10, I pulled my truck into the pickup lane at Prescott Elementary. The afternoon was cool and bright, autumn leaves skittering across the sidewalk like small golden animals. Children poured through the double doors in waves, backpacks bouncing, voices high and scattered. And then there he was. Jamal, 9 years old now, tall for his age, with Dorothy's wide brown eyes and Marcus's broad shoulders already starting to show. He spotted my truck, and his whole face changed, lit up from inside like someone had turned on every lamp in a dark house. Grandpa! He yanked open the passenger door and scrambled in, all elbows and knees and that gap-toothed smile that cracked my heart every time I saw it. Mom said you're taking me to eat. Central BBQ, I said, ruffling his hair. Extra cornbread. Yes. He pumped his fist like he had won something important. I buckled him in and texted Leroy. Got him. You're clear. Leroy's reply came in seconds. Copy. Eyes on the building. We drove to Central BBQ on Central Avenue, and I ordered him a pulled pork plate with extra cornbread and sweet tea. He attacked it like a boy who had been waiting all day for something good to happen. Sauce on his chin, cornbread crumbs on his shirt. Happy. I watched him eat and tried to hold this moment in my chest like a photograph I could keep. Grandpa, Jamal said between bites. Tyler brought his dad's fishing rod to show and tell today. That right? Yeah. It was really long. Like taller than Mr. Henderson. He took a swig of sweet tea. I told Tyler, my dad used to fish too, on big boats in the ocean. My hand tightened around my own glass. You did? Oh, Mom says Dad was a hero. Jamal looked at me with those brown eyes, Dorothy's eyes, open and trusting. She says he saved 2 people when the boat went down. That he was brave. Is that true, Grandpa? The barbecue sauce on my plate blurred. I blinked hard, and swallowed against the thickness in my throat. This boy sitting across from me, believing his father was a hero, believing in a story that might be nothing but smoke and sawdust. "Your dad loved you very much," I said carefully. "That part is absolutely true." Jamal smiled, satisfied, and returned to his cornbread. I looked out the window at the parking lot, at the cars passing on Central Avenue, at the world continuing its ordinary business. While mine fell apart behind my ribs, my phone buzzed at 4:27. "Leroy, she's moving. Dressed up. Heading south on foot. Walking fast." I glanced at Jamal, who was now drawing shapes in his barbecue sauce with a French fry. "Keep eating, buddy." "I'm right here." 4:39. Another text. Turned east on Cooper. Entering a restaurant. The beauty shop. 4:44. She's seated. Corner table. Someone's joining her. 4:51. A photo arrived. I opened it beneath the table, angling the screen away from Jamal. Grainy. Taken through the restaurant window from across the street. But clear enough. Vanessa sat at a small table in the back corner of the beauty shop. A latte in front of her, untouched. She was leaning forward, her posture open, relaxed. Nothing like the rigid, arms-crossed woman who opened her door 3 inches to take my envelope. She was wearing a dress I had never seen. Dark green. Earrings catching the light. Effort. She had made effort. Across from her sat a man. Mid-30s. Clean jaw, sharp haircut. Charcoal blazer over a white shirt. Good-looking in the way men are when they know it, and have decided to use it. He leaned back in his chair, with the ease of someone accustomed to being comfortable everywhere he went. His left hand rested on top of Vanessa's on the table. Not holding, covering, possessing. I did not recognize him. Not from the neighborhood. Not from Marcus's old circle. Nobody I had ever seen at the apartment. 4:58. Another photo. The man leaning closer, his mouth near Vanessa's ear. She was smiling. A real smile. Wide and warm and unguarded. I had never once seen that expression on her face in 5 years of monthly visits. The woman I knew was cold, tight-lipped, transactional. This woman was someone else entirely. 5:12. Leroy texted. They've been talking for 20 minutes. Very familiar with each other. Body language says this isn't new. 5:19. He paid. Cash. Left a big tip. They're getting up. 5:24. Photo. The man's arm around Vanessa's waist as they walked toward the door. Her head tilted against his shoulder. Comfortable. Practiced. Like two people who had done this many times before. 5:27. They separated outside. She's heading north back home. He's walking south toward Union Avenue. Following him. 5:33. Got his car. Black Mercedes sedan. Tennessee plates. Running the registration now. I stared at my phone beneath the table. Jamal had finished his plate and was watching the television mounted in the corner, some cartoon with bright colors and loud voices. He was oblivious. 9 years old and oblivious. And I wanted to keep him that way for as long as possible. 5:41. Leroy's text made my stomach drop. Victor Salinas. Age 34. Attorney. Real estate law. Office on Union Avenue downtown. No criminal record. Licensed in Tennessee and Mississippi. A lawyer. Vanessa was seeing a real estate lawyer. While living in an apartment she claimed she could barely afford, while taking $900 a month from a 67-year-old man who crawled under porches to earn it, while her husband was supposedly 5 years dead. 5:57. Final text from Leroy. Coming back. We need to talk tonight. This is bigger than we thought. I slid my phone into my pocket and looked at Jamal. He had turned back from the television and was watching me with his head tilted slightly, the way Dorothy used to when she knew something was bothering me. Grandpa. Are you okay? You look sad. I forced a smile. Just thinking, buddy. Old men think too much sometimes. Mom says thinking too much gives you wrinkles. He grinned. Your mom might be right about that one. I drove Jamal back to 847 Carr Avenue at 6:50. Vanessa opened the door in the same clothes she had worn to the beauty shop. The green dress. The earrings. She had not bothered to change back into her grieving widow costume. Up close, I could smell perfume. Something expensive that did not belong in a third-floor walk-up, paid for by an old man's aching hands. He was good, I said, handing Jamal over. We had fun. Thanks, Vanessa said flatly. Not meeting my eyes. She pulled Jamal inside by the shoulder. Bye, Grandpa. Jamal called, waving over his shoulder. Bye, buddy. The door closed. The deadbolt clicked, and I stood there on the landing, smelling her perfume in the air, thinking about that smile she had given Victor Salinas. The warmth of it. The realness. While for 5 years, all I ever got was ice. Walking down those stairs, my phone buzzed one more time. Leroy. His office handles property sales. Big ones. Callahan. Why does a grieving widow with no income need a real estate attorney? I did not answer the text. I did not need to. Because I already knew the answer was going to break something that could not be fixed. Wednesday morning, 6:45. My phone rang before I had finished my first cup of coffee. Leroy's name on the screen. Get over here, he said. No greeting. No pleasantries. You need to see these numbers. I was at his kitchen table by 7:15, the coffee from my own kitchen abandoned and cold. Leroy looked like he had not slept. His reading glasses sat crooked on his nose, and the table was covered in printed spreadsheets, highlighted in yellow and pink and orange. His laptop glowed between stacks of paper like a window into something I was not sure I wanted to see. How did you get all this? I asked, pulling out the chair across from him. 26 years in insurance fraud, Leroy said. You build contacts. People who owe you. People who remember when you saved their license or look the other way on a borderline claim. He tapped the laptop screen. Vanessa's financial records. Banking. Deposits. Transfers. Everything from October 2019 to last week. Is this legal? Gray area, Leroy admitted. We're not taking it to court. Not yet. Right now we're just reading a story. And Eugene, this story doesn't add up the way Vanessa told it. He turned the laptop so we could both see. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Rows of transactions, color-coded by category. Her monthly expenses, Leroy said, running his finger down the screen. Rent on that apartment. $1,200. Groceries and household. $450. Utilities. $160. Transportation, clothing, Jamal's school supplies, miscellaneous. Call it another $300. Total minimum monthly cost to live the way she's living. $2,100. I did the math without thinking. My $900 doesn't cover it. Not even close. Leroy clicked to another tab. She's short $1,200 every month. No job, no W-2s filed, no employer, no paycheck deposits anywhere. So how has she survived for 5 years? He let the question sit for a moment, then clicked again. A new column appeared. Deposits. Highlighted in bright yellow. A long list, stretching down the screen, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading somewhere dark. Every single month, Leroy said, pointing. Since November 2019, Vanessa receives a deposit of $1,800. Like clockwork, usually between the 5th and 8th of the month. I leaned forward, scanning the dates. November 8th, 2019. December 6th, 2019. January 7th, 2020. The pattern continued month after month after month, all the way to October of this year. Never missed. Never late. 1,800. I repeated. From who? That's where it gets interesting. Leroy opened another window. A corporate filing document. The deposits come from a business account. An LLC registered in Delaware. No individual name attached. Just a company called Coastal Breeze Holdings. Delaware, I said. Shell company state. Leroy nodded. Set up specifically to hide who's behind it. But I traced the formation documents. The registered agent is a legal services firm out of Wilmington, and the initial filing was submitted by an attorney office located in Memphis, Tennessee. Victor Salinas, I said. Victor Salinas. Leroy confirmed. His office set up the LLC 5 years ago, 1 month before you started making payments. The timing is surgical, Eugene. I sat back in my chair. The numbers on the screen blurred and reformed. $1,800 a month for 5 years. That was $108,000. Plus my $53,000. Over $160,000 flowing into Vanessa's life, while she looked me in the eye every month and said she could barely afford rent. My money, I said slowly. She doesn't need it. Your money is pocket change to her, Leroy said. The $900 you break your back for every month? It's not keeping her lights on. She could throw it in the river and not notice. Then why take it? My voice was rising. I could hear it climbing and could not stop it. Why put me through 5 years of this? Why let Dorothy die thinking? I stopped. Could not finish. Leroy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's what we need to figure out. But first, there's something else. Something worse." He clicked to a new folder on his desktop. Legal documents. Property records. My throat tightened before I even read the first line. Your house, Eugene. 1614 Evelyn Avenue. What about it? Leroy turned the screen toward me fully. A real estate listing. Professional photographs of my home. The porch I had rebuilt. The kitchen cabinets Dorothy chose. The magnolia tree in full bloom. Listed at $220,000. This was filed with the county assessor's office 10 days ago, Leroy said. Property transfer documents. A sale is being prepared. That's impossible. My hands gripped the edge of the table. That house is mine. Dorothy left it to Jamal in her will. I'm the guardian. No one can sell it without my signature. Leroy pulled another document from the stack of papers beside his laptop. Slid it across the table toward me. I picked it up. A power of attorney form. My name printed at the top, and at the bottom, a signature. My signature. Except it was not mine. Close. Good enough to fool a notary who was not paying attention. But I had spent 43 years signing work orders and invoices and contracts. I knew my own hand, and this was not it. The loop on the G was wrong. The tail of the D was too short. Someone had practiced my name and gotten it almost right. Almost. But almost is not the same as true. Victor Salinas notarized this document, Leroy said, his voice hard. 3 weeks ago, it gives Vanessa full authority to sell the property on your behalf. She's listed as your representative. I stared at the forged signature. At my name in someone else's hand. At the legal stamp of Victor Salinas, attorney at law, pressed into the paper like a seal on a death warrant. That house, I said, and my voice was not my own. It was something lower. Something that came from the same place Dorothy's sound had come from the day Raymond Gill delivered his news. My grandfather cut the lumber for that frame. My father raised the second story. I installed every cabinet, every shelf, every closet rod. Dorothy painted every room. She planted that magnolia tree the year Jamal was born. 3 generations, Leroy. 3 generations of Crawfords in that house. I know, Leroy said quietly, and she's going to sell it. To a stranger. For $220,000. I looked up at him, using my forged signature, through her boyfriend, the lawyer, and then disappear. Leroy added, with the money from the house, plus whatever's in that Delaware account. We're talking over $300,000 total, Eugene. I stood up. The chair scraped back across the linoleum. I walked to Leroy's kitchen window and looked out at his backyard. A pecan tree dropping its last leaves. A rusted barbecue grill he never used anymore. Ordinary things. Safe things. Things that stayed where you put them. That house wasn't just wood and nails, I said. My back to him. Dorothy's hands touched every room. Her magnolia tree shades that front porch where 3 generations of Crawfords sat on summer evenings listening to the cicadas. Where she taught Jamal to count. Where we drank sweet tea on our anniversary every single year. I turned back to face Leroy. Something had changed in my chest. The grief was still there. The shock was still there. But beneath both of them, something harder was forming. Something with edges. How long until the sale goes through? I asked. Leroy checked his notes. The listing went active a week ago. But the actual closing requires signatures, inspections, title search. Based on the paperwork Victor filed, they're aiming to close by next Wednesday. 7 days from now. 7 days. 7 days before Vanessa signed away Dorothy's house, took $300,000, and vanished with a man in a charcoal blazer, while I was left with nothing but a forged document and an empty street. This isn't about money anymore, I said. My voice was calm now. Cold. The calm of a man who has stopped being sad and started being dangerous. This is war. Leroy nodded slowly. Then we'd better move fast. What's next? The urn, I said. Tomorrow. I need to open that urn. Thursday afternoon. The house was quiet. Just the tick of Dorothy's hallway clock and the creak of old joists settling in the November chill. Leroy sat beside me, a canvas bag at his feet, flathead screwdriver, utility knife, latex gloves, things we might need to open what should never have been closed. The urn sat on the shelf I had built from white oak the week after Dorothy's funeral. She wanted it in the living room, where she could see it from her chair. I mounted the shelf at exactly her eye level so she would not strain her neck, measured twice, made sure it was perfect. Because it held our son. Except it did not. You sure? Leroy asked quietly. I looked at the urn, brushed bronze. Magnolia blossoms engraved along the rim. I chose that design because magnolias were Dorothy's favorite. Because the tree in our yard was the last thing Marcus helped me plant before Biloxi. I have to know, I said. Leroy pulled on latex gloves and handed me a pair. I stood and lifted the urn from the shelf. Heavier than I remembered. Maybe 10 pounds. I had carried it from the funeral home to Elmwood Cemetery, and back again because Dorothy could not bear to leave it underground. She wanted him close. I set it on the coffee table. Neither of us moved for a long moment. This object that Dorothy had whispered to every night for 6 months, while I lay upstairs pretending I could not hear her cry. Leroy worked the flathead into the silicone seal. Soft pops as it broke free, inch by inch. Small, precise sounds, like something being undone that was never meant to be redone. The lid came free. He lifted it off. We both leaned forward. Inside was a clear plastic bag tied with a twist tie, filled with fine gray-brown powder. But the color was wrong. Too uniform, too light. Human cremains carry variation. Bone fragments, mineral deposits. This was smooth. And even like something processed for consistency, I lifted the bag. Far too light. Beneath it, at the bottom, sat a handful of smooth round stones. River pebbles. The kind you buy at a garden center for $3. Weight. Just enough to make the urn feel real. Leroy took the bag. Untied it. Dipped 2 fingers in and rubbed the powder between his thumb and forefinger. Brought it to his nose. Sawdust, he said flatly. Fine grain. Probably oak or maple, run through a belt sander, mixed with sand. This is not human remains, Eugene. This is workshop waste. Sawdust. The word hit the center of my chest like a hammer striking a nail flush. Marcus grew up in my workshop. He learned to sand and plane and cut in that garage. He knew what sawdust looked like, smelled like, felt like between his fingers. He breathed it for 18 years, and he put it in a bronze urn with magnolia engravings and let his mother cry over it until crying killed her. My legs gave out quietly. One moment standing, the next on the floor, with my back against the couch. Leroy was beside me. I could feel him there, but could not look at him. Dorothy sat right here, I said. My voice came from somewhere far beneath me. Every single night, for 6 months, she held this urn in her lap and talked to it. Leroy did not speak. She told it about Jamal's first day of 2nd grade, about the magnolia blooming in April, about the pie she baked for Thanksgiving, even though nobody was coming. My throat was closing. She told it she loved it. She told it she missed it. She told it she was sorry she didn't hug him longer at the airport. I looked at the powder in the bag. Fine. Soft. Worthless. She was talking to wood shavings. For 6 months, pouring her heart into sawdust and river pebbles, until her heart had nothing left to give. The silence was absolute. Even the clock seemed to stop. He knew, I said. And now my voice carried an edge, thin as a chisel. Marcus knew what this was. He grew up breathing this dust. He knew exactly what he was putting in that urn. Knew his mother would hold it and cry over it and whisper to it like it was her child. I picked up a pebble from the urn's bottom. Smooth. Gray. The kind a child skips across a pond, chosen for its weight and nothing else. I built this shelf for her, I said, looking up at the empty oak bracket. Sanded it 3 times so it would be smooth under her fingers, because I thought we were keeping our son close. I set the pebble on the coffee table beside the open urn. We kept nothing. We kept sawdust and stones. And Dorothy died believing she was talking to her boy. I stood slowly, looked at the urn one last time. The magnolia engravings. The bronze I had polished every Sunday for the first year, because Dorothy asked. Keep it shining, Eugene. He deserves that. He deserved nothing. She had deserved everything. And this lie stole it from her. Tonight, I said, turning to Leroy, we drive to Tunica. I want to look my son in the face and know for certain that the man on that camera is the same one who filled his mother's urn with sawdust. Leroy stood and gripped my shoulder. Tonight, I walked out of the room without looking back, but I felt the urn behind me. Empty, hollow, a perfect shell with nothing real inside. Like everything Vanessa and Marcus had built around me for 5 years. We left Memphis at 9:15, heading south on Highway 61. The road stretched ahead like a dark ribbon unwinding through the Mississippi Delta, flat and endless, lined with bare cotton fields and skeletal trees. This was the Blues Highway, the road Robert Johnson walked, the road my father's father drove when he hauled lumber from the mills down south. Now it was carrying me towards something that might destroy whatever was left of my family. Leroy drove. I sat in the passenger seat with my hands in my lap, watching the mile markers slip past in the headlights. Neither of us spoke for the first 20 minutes. Some silences are not empty. They are full of things too heavy for words to carry. Tunica, Mississippi. 45 minutes south of Memphis. Once the poorest county in America. Then the casinos came, in the 90s, and everything changed, and nothing changed, at the same time. Big lights on the highway, slot machines ringing, and behind all that glitter, the same tired trailer parks and dollar stores that had been there since before I was born. Leroy's contact had traced Vanessa's car to a trailer park called Delta Pines, just off Highway 61, south of the casino strip. A gravel lot with maybe 30 units, tucked behind a stand of pine trees where the road curved toward the river. The kind of place you go when you do not want to be found. We pulled off the highway at 10:05 and followed a county road for half a mile until the pines appeared on our left. Leroy killed the headlights and rolled the car to a stop beneath a catalpa tree at the edge of the lot. From here we could see the rows of trailers stretching back toward the tree line. Most were dark. A few had porch lights on, yellow and dim, against the Mississippi night. "Which one?" I asked. "Last row," Leroy said, pointing toward the far end of the lot. "Unit 23. The one with the blue awning." I could barely make it out in the darkness. A single wide trailer, older model, with a faded blue canvas awning over the front steps. No lights visible from our angle. No car parked out front. "We wait," Leroy said. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a thermos of coffee and a pair of binoculars. Handed me the binoculars. Could be a while. It was not a while. At 10:31, headlights appeared on the county road behind us. A vehicle turning into the lot. I slid down in my seat instinctively, though we were parked 50 yards away in shadow. The vehicle rolled past us slowly. A pickup truck. Dark color. Tennessee plates. Vanessa's truck. She parked in front of Unit 23 and cut the engine. The driver's door opened. In the dome light, I saw her. Same dark hair pulled back. Same posture, but dressed down tonight. Jeans and a hoodie. No earrings. No perfume performance. This was not the woman who met Victor Salinas at the beauty shop. This was someone going somewhere private. Somewhere she did not need to impress. She walked to the trailer door and knocked. 2 quick raps. The door opened from inside. Light spilled out onto the gravel, warm and yellow. And in that light, a man appeared. I raised the binoculars. He was thinner than I remembered. 20, maybe 25 pounds lighter. His hair was longer, past his ears, tangled and unwashed. A beard covered his jaw, darker than I expected, flecked with early gray that had not been there 5 years ago. He wore a faded hoodie and sweatpants, the clothes of a man who had stopped caring what he looked like. He looked older, tired, worn in the way people get when they have been hiding from something for too long. But it was him, not because of the face, though the face was his. Not because of the build, though the shoulders were still broad the way they had always been. It was the way he stood in that doorway, the way his weight shifted to the right, the way his left knee bent at an angle that was not quite natural, and his left shoulder dropped to accommodate what the leg could not carry. That hitch, that rhythm, the same pattern I had watched him develop over 8 years. The same compensation his body had learned after Dr. Simmons rebuilt his knee with a cadaver graft and titanium screws. Marcus stepped aside and Vanessa walked in. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. Casual. Familiar. The gesture of a man greeting his wife at the end of an ordinary day. Then he closed the door, and the light disappeared. I lowered the binoculars. My hands were trembling. Not from cold. "That's him," I said. The words came out strange, hollow, like speaking through a pipe. "That's Marcus." Leroy nodded slowly. He had seen enough through the windshield to know I was not imagining things. "He's alive," I continued, and saying it out loud made it real in a way that watching footage on a laptop had not. "He's healthy. He's standing 40 yards from me, kissing his wife goodnight like he never left." I thought about Dorothy, about the urn full of sawdust I had opened that afternoon, about 6 months of her whispering to wood shavings, while our son was living in a trailer park 45 minutes down the highway, close enough to drive home for dinner, close enough to hear her if she screamed loud enough. "And she comes here," I said. "Vanessa drives down here to see him. Regular. Like a schedule." The footage showed him at her place between 1 and 3 a.m., Leroy said. "And now we know she comes here too. They're still together, Eugene. Never stopped being together." The trailer sat quiet now. Through the thin walls I could see shadows moving against drawn curtains. 2 people, living their life. While 45 minutes north, I crawled under porches and sanded floors and handed over $900 a month to fund whatever this was. We sat in that car for 2 hours. At 12:37, Vanessa emerged. She and Marcus stood on the trailer steps for a moment. He said something. She laughed. Then she got in her truck and drove away. Tail lights disappearing down the county road toward the highway. Marcus stayed outside. He lit a cigarette and leaned against the trailer's siding, looking up at the sky. The Delta sky in November is enormous. No city lights to dim it, just stars from horizon to horizon. Endless and indifferent. My son stood beneath that sky and smoked and looked at the stars like a man without a single burden on his conscience. I wanted to get out of the car. Wanted to walk across that gravel lot and grab him by the collar and ask him why. Why he let his mother die. Why he put sawdust in an urn. Why he took my money and hid like a rat while I broke my body to pay for his lies. But Leroy's hand was on my arm. Steady. Firm. Not tonight, he said quietly. We know where he is now. He's not going anywhere. But if we confront him tonight, we lose control of what happens next. I clenched my jaw until my teeth ached. Leroy was right. I knew he was right. But knowing and feeling are two different countries, and I was standing on the border between them with my fists balled and my heart hammering. Tomorrow, Leroy said. We come back tomorrow. Prepared. Marcus finished his cigarette, flicked the butt into the gravel, and disappeared back inside the trailer. The light went off. Unit 23 went dark. Just another trailer, in a lot full of trailers. Just another shadow in the Mississippi night. I stared at that dark shape for a long time. My son was in there, alive, breathing, sleeping peacefully 45 minutes from his mother's grave. Tomorrow, I said finally, and the word tasted like iron in my mouth. I did not wait until tomorrow. By noon Thursday, I was back on Highway 61, driving south alone. Leroy stayed behind to dig deeper into Victor Salinas. The drive felt shorter this time. 45 minutes of flat Delta road and my knuckles white on the steering wheel. No radio. The noise in my head was enough. Delta pines looked sadder in daylight. Rusted trailers. Weeds through gravel. A chained dog barking at nothing. Unit 23 at the end of the last row, blue awning faded nearly white. I parked 20 feet from his door. Did not hide. Walked across the gravel and knocked 3 times. Hard enough to rattle aluminum. The door opened. Marcus stood there in a stained undershirt, coffee mug in hand. For 2 seconds he did not react. Then his eyes went wide. Coffee spilled over his fingers. Dad. Punched from his chest. I looked at my son. Thinner. Older. Beard unkempt. Eyes carrying something I had never seen in them. Fear. Can I come in? I said. Not a question. He stepped back. That familiar hitch in his left leg. I walked past him into the trailer. Small. Dim. A cot. A portable stove. Empty beer cans. The smell of cigarettes and instant noodles. This box was where my son had lived for 5 years. How did you find me? His voice shook. Security camera on Vanessa's landing. You walk in and out every month like you own the place. He set the mug down. Hands trembling. Dad. I can explain. Then explain. He struggled for words. I owed people money. 60,000. Gambling debts. Bad people. They sent men to our house. To Vanessa's job. They knew where Jamal went to school. So you faked your death. It was the only way to make them stop. Words tumbling fast now. Vanessa found someone to make the paperwork. Raymond Gill wasn't from any fishing company. She said if everyone believed I was dead, the men would write off the debt, Vanessa said. I repeated. She planned it, he admitted. The whole thing. Found Gill. Set up the boat story. Got the fake certificate. She said it was the only way to protect the family. Protect the family. I let those words sit between us like a blade on a table. Let me tell you what your protection did, Marcus. He flinched. 1 step back. Your mother stopped eating. stopped sleeping, sat in her chair every night holding an urn full of sawdust and talking to it like you could hear her. Something shifted behind his eyes. She lost 25 pounds. Forgot her pills. Forgot what day it was. On September 8th, I came home and found her on the kitchen floor. Left side of her face gone slack. Massive stroke. Marcus grabbed the counter edge. His face went white. 3 days in the ICU. Never woke up. She died whispering your name, asking me to tell you she loved you when I visited your grave. His legs gave out. He slid down the cabinet to the floor. No. Vanessa said. She told me. What did Vanessa say? She said everyone was fine. His voice cracked wide open. You and Mom. Healthy. Retired. Happy. She said Jamal was great. She said everything was fine. Your mother died 7 months after your funeral. I said. And you were 45 minutes away. Right here. In this box. The sound that came from him was not crying. It was something structural. A beam cracking under impossible weight. She didn't tell me, he gasped. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know Mom was gone. She lied to you, I said. The same way you lied to us. He looked up. Face destroyed. If I'd known, I would have what? Come home? You had 5 years to pick up a phone. Drive 45 minutes. Knock on my door. You chose this instead. No answer. There was none. I looked at him on the floor of a Mississippi trailer. Sobbing. Broken. And I felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness. The painful recognition that my boy was still in there. Buried under years of cowardice. Still there the way good wood hides beneath old paint. But I could not reach for him. The anger was too large. Dorothy's voice too clear in my memory. I'm not done, I said quietly. There's more you don't know. About Vanessa. About what she's planning. Marcus looked up. What do you mean? Your wife is selling our house, Marcus. The Crawford house. Dorothy's house. She forged my signature on a power of attorney, and she's closing the sale next Wednesday. $220,000. And she's planning to take that money and every other dollar she's been hiding and disappear. With Victor Salinas. Her lawyer. Her boyfriend. Marcus stared at me. The tears stopped. Something else replaced them. Shock. Becoming understanding. Becoming rage. And Jamal? He whispered. She's leaving him behind. The silence lasted 10 seconds. 20. Marcus's jaw tightened. His hands clenched on his knees. What do you need me to do? He asked. Tomorrow, I said. I come back with proof. Everything. Photos. Emails. Bank records. And you decide what kind of man you want to be. I turned and walked out into the Mississippi afternoon. Sun blinding after the dim trailer. I stood on the gravel and breathed deep for the first time in hours. Behind me, through thin aluminum walls, my son was still crying. The sound followed me to the truck, to the highway, all the way home. But mixed in with the grief was something else now. Not hope exactly. More like the first crack of light under a door that had been sealed for too long. I called Leroy from the highway on my way back. Told him what happened. Marcus crying on the floor. Vanessa hiding Dorothy's death from him. The whole rotten architecture of it. Pick me up, Leroy said. I've got something to show you. And we need to talk about next steps. I swung by his place on Young Avenue. He climbed into the passenger seat with a folder of printed documents and that look he got when he had been thinking too hard for too long. We drove north toward my house, the afternoon sun slanting low through the windshield, painting everything gold and shadow. For 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. Leroy stared out the window at the passing houses, the old churches, the corner stores with their hand-painted signs, Memphis sliding by like a postcard from a life that used to make sense. Then he said, I need to tell you something, Eugene. About why I'm doing this. I glanced at him. His jaw was working beneath his beard. His hands rested on the folder in his lap, but they were not still. The fingers moved against the paper, like they were searching for something to hold on to. You don't owe me an explanation, I said. 40 years of friendship is reason enough. It's not just friendship. He paused, took a breath that seemed to cost him something. I had a sister, Marlene, younger than me, by 4 years. I looked at him again. In 40 years, Leroy had mentioned Marlene maybe 3 times, always in passing, always quickly, like touching a hot stove and pulling back before the burn could set. Marlene married a man named Curtis Webb in 1996, Leroy continued. Handsome, charming, the kind of man who could talk you into anything and make you feel lucky for the privilege. They had a good life for a while. House in Whitehaven, 2 cars, vacations. He stopped. Then Curtis started disappearing. Overnight, trips that got longer. Money that went missing from their joint account. Marlene made excuses for him the way people do when they love someone more than they love the truth. The highway hummed beneath us. I kept my eyes on the road and let him talk. In 2003, Curtis went on a fishing trip to Kentucky Lake. Never came back. They found his boat capsized. His wallet and shoes on the shore. No body. Leroy's voice was steady, but I could hear what it cost him to keep it that way. They declared him dead after 60 days. Marlene collected $200,000 in life insurance. Jesus, I said softly. She was devastated. Curtis was the love of her life. She couldn't eat, couldn't work, started drinking. The money sat in the bank untouched because spending it felt like accepting he was gone. Leroy's fingers pressed harder against the folder. 8 months later, I got a call at 3 in the morning. Marlene's neighbor found her in the bathtub. She'd taken every pill in the medicine cabinet. The truck cab was very quiet. Just the engine and the road and the weight of what he was telling me. I drove to her house, Leroy said. Broke every speed limit between Cooper Young and Whitehaven. Got there 6 hours too late. 6 hours, Eugene. If I'd checked on her the night before, if I'd answered the phone when she called at 11 instead of letting it go to voicemail because I was tired. Leroy, let me finish. His voice was firm, not angry, just determined to get it all out before the door closed again. 3 months after she died, an insurance investigator contacted me. Routine follow-up on the payout. Something didn't add up in Curtis's case. They dug deeper. Turned out Curtis Webb was alive and well in Pensacola, Florida. New name. New woman. Collecting disability under a fake Social Security number. I gripped the steering wheel. The parallel was so exact it felt like looking in a mirror that reflected someone else's pain. He faked his death for the insurance money, Leroy said. Let Marlene believe he drowned. Let her grieve herself into a bottle and a bathtub. Collected $200,000 and used it to start a new life with a waitress he met at a casino in Biloxi. Did they catch him? Eventually. 7 years later. Tax fraud, not the faking. Got 4 years. Leroy's laugh was short and bitter. 4 years for destroying my sister. She got a headstone and he got a plea deal. We drove in silence for a long moment. The Memphis skyline appeared ahead of us, low and gray against the November sky. That's why I became an insurance investigator, Leroy said. 26 years of hunting men who fake their deaths and leave their families to rot. 26 years of making sure what happened to Marlene didn't happen to anyone else. He turned to look at me. And then you called me Saturday morning. And it was happening again. Same lie. Same pattern. Except this time, I wasn't 6 hours too late. I did not know what to say. 40 years of friendship, and I had never known this. Never known the weight he carried every day beneath that calm exterior. The guilt of a missed phone call, the rage of a justice system that measured a woman's life at 4 years in a minimum security facility. I couldn't save Marlene, Leroy said quietly. I was 6 hours late, and she was gone. But Jamal is still here. Your grandson is still breathing. And we have time, Eugene. We still have time to get this right. I nodded. My throat was too tight for words. Vanessa is not going to do to Jamal what Curtis did to Marlene, Leroy said. His voice was steel now. She's not going to abandon that boy and disappear with the money. Not while I'm breathing. I looked at my friend. This man I had known for 4 decades, who had helped me hang drywall and fix leaky faucets and carry Dorothy's casket, who had been carrying his own dead all along, silent and steady, waiting for the moment his pain could become someone else's protection. Thank you, I said. The words felt small against what he had given me, but they were all I had. Don't thank me yet, Leroy said. We've got 5 days until that closing. 5 days to stop Vanessa from selling Dorothy's house. 5 days to get Marcus to cooperate and build a case the FBI can't ignore. 5 days, I repeated. We start tonight. I've got a contact at the Memphis field office. Former colleague. She owes me one. He opened the folder on his lap. But first, you need to see what else I found in Victor Salinas' email server. He pulled out a printed page and handed it to me. I read it at a red light on Union Avenue. 3 lines. From Vanessa to Victor. Dated 6 days ago. The kid's not my problem anymore. Eugene can deal with him, or the state will. Either way, we'll be on a beach by Christmas. I read it twice. 3 times. Each time the words cut deeper. The kid. Not Jamal. Not my son. The kid. Like he was furniture. She was leaving behind in a house she no longer wanted. 5 days. I said again. And this time the words were not a question. They were a promise. Friday morning, Leroy's kitchen table looked like a war room. Printed emails spread across the surface in chronological order. Bank statements highlighted in 3 colors. Flight itineraries. Corporate filings. A yellow legal pad covered in his tight handwriting. Arrows connecting names to dates to dollar amounts. He had been up all night. The coffee pot was empty, and the circles under his eyes told me everything about how the hours between midnight and dawn had been spent. Sit down, he said when I walked in. I cracked Victor's email server around 2 in the morning. What I found? He shook his head. Eugene, this woman has been planning this for at least a year. Maybe longer. I pulled out the chair and sat. The morning light through Leroy's kitchen window fell across the papers, like a spotlight on evidence that did not want to be seen. Start from the beginning, I said. Leroy arranged 4 printed emails in front of me. These are from the past 6 weeks. Vanessa to Victor. Read them in order. The first email was dated October 2nd. Subject line empty. V called the realtor today. Listing goes live next week. Make sure the power of attorney is filed before then. Eugene won't notice. He barely leaves his house, except for jobs and payment day. We just need his signature to look close enough for the county clerk. You handle that part. The second email. October 15th. Listing is live. 2 showings already scheduled. Price is right at $220. If we get a full offer by month end, we can close by mid-November. Have you set up the offshore transfer yet? I want everything ready the moment the check clears. The third email. October 28th. Account in Nassau is active. Routing confirmed. The moment closing funds hit the escrow account, Victor transfers to Nassau within 24 hours. Total should be around $310 when you add what's already in Coastal Breeze. That's enough. More than enough. Book the flights. One way. San Jose, Costa Rica. 2 tickets. I looked up at Leroy. 2 tickets. 2, he confirmed. Vanessa and Victor. That's it. The 4th email. November 1st. 6 days ago. The one Leroy had shown me yesterday in the truck, but there was more below it now. A reply from Victor I had not seen. Don't worry about the kid. I talked to a family attorney friend off the record. Once you're out of the country for 30 days without contact, the state initiates emergency custody proceedings. Eugene will probably petition for guardianship. They'll give it to him. He's the grandfather. Either way, not our problem. My hands were flat on the table, pressing down hard, like if I did not hold on to something solid, I might come apart. They've thought of everything, I said. Almost everything, Leroy replied. They didn't think of Cecilia Washington looking out her window at 2 in the morning. They didn't think of a 67-year-old carpenter who wouldn't stop asking questions. He pulled a larger document from beneath the emails. A flight itinerary printed on travel agency letterhead. 2 passengers. Vanessa M. Crawford. Victor A. Salinas. Departure. Memphis International Airport. Wednesday, November 20th at 11:15 a.m. Destination: San Jose, Costa Rica, via Miami. One way, Wednesday. I said. The same day as the closing. They close on the house in the morning, Leroy explained. Funds transfer to escrow. Victor moves the money to Nassau electronically. Then they drive straight to the airport and fly out that afternoon. By the time anyone realizes what happened, they're in another country with $310,000 in an untraceable offshore account. And Jamal comes home from school to an empty apartment. Correct. Leroy's voice was hard. A 9-year-old boy walks in the door, and his mother is gone. No note. No explanation. Nothing. I closed my eyes. Saw Jamal's face. His gap-toothed smile. The way he held my hand walking up the stairs. The way he said grandpa like it was the safest word he knew. What about Marcus? I asked. Marcus doesn't appear in any of these emails. Not once. Victor and Vanessa never mention him except as a liability. Leroy pointed to a line in the October 15th email I had missed. Here, M is still in Tunica. Doesn't suspect anything. Let him rot down there. Let him rot. His own wife. So Marcus is getting abandoned too, I said. Everyone is getting abandoned, Leroy said. You. Marcus. Jamal. Everyone who trusted Vanessa is being left behind while she and her boyfriend take the money and run. I stood up from the table, walked to the window, looked out at Leroy's backyard. The pecan tree, the empty bird feeder, the wooden fence I had helped him build 12 years ago. Ordinary things, things that stayed where you put them. 5 days, I said. We have 5 days. 4 now, Leroy corrected. It's Friday. Closing is Wednesday morning. Your FBI contact, I said, turning back to face him. The one who owes you, Denise Holloway. Special Agent. Financial Crimes Division. Memphis Field Office. Leroy was already reaching for his phone. I called her last night. Gave her the broad strokes. Wire fraud. Identity fraud. Forged legal documents. Attempted theft of real property. She's interested, Eugene. Very interested. When can we meet? She wants to see everything. Emails, bank records, the footage, the urn contents. Leroy gestured at the table full of evidence. I told her we could come in Saturday morning. What about Marcus? I asked. His testimony. That's the key, Leroy said. Holloway said Marcus's cooperation is what turns this from a civil case into a federal one. If he testifies about the fake death, the fake certificate, Vanessa's role in orchestrating the whole thing, that's conspiracy charges, wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, forgery. We're talking serious federal time. I told him I'd come back today with proof, then go. Leroy handed me a manila envelope from the table. Copies of everything. Emails, bank statements, flight itinerary, photos of Vanessa and Victor. Show him what his wife really is, and ask him one question. What question? Ask him if he's willing to lose 4 years in prison to make sure his son doesn't lose everything. Leroy met my eyes. Because that's the trade, Eugene. Marcus testifies. He goes to prison. But Jamal keeps his home. Jamal keeps his grandfather. Jamal doesn't become a ward of the state. I took the envelope. Felt its weight. Not heavy. Paper and ink. But it carried the power to bring everything down. I'll be back tonight, I said. With an answer. Eugene. Leroy stopped me at the door. Be careful down there. If Vanessa finds out Marcus knows, she won't, I said. Not until Wednesday. And by Wednesday, it'll be too late for her to run. I walked to my truck with the envelope under my arm. The morning was bright and cold. Memphis spread out around me, going about its Friday business. People driving to work. Kids walking to school. A woman watering plants on her porch. Nobody looking at the old man in the pickup truck, carrying enough evidence to destroy 3 lives and save 1. 4 days. 96 hours. And everything depended on a broken man in a Mississippi trailer saying yes. The third time I drove Highway 61 to Tunica, the road felt like it belonged to me. Every curve, every faded casino billboard. This road had become the spine of something I never asked to build. I reached Delta Pines at 2:15. The trailer park was quiet. A woman hanging laundry 3 units down. A cat sleeping under a truck. I knocked on Unit 23 without hesitation. Marcus opened the door expecting me. Red-rimmed eyes. Jaw set hard. He had not slept. I could see the night's worth of thinking carved into his face. Come in, he said. The trailer was cleaner. Beer cans gone. Cot made. Small gestures of a man trying to reassemble dignity from wreckage. I set the manila envelope on the folding table. Everything's in there. Photos, emails, bank records, flight itinerary. Marcus sat on the cot and opened it. I watched his face as he went through the documents. The photos first. Vanessa and Victor at the beauty shop. His hand on hers. The kiss beneath the streetlight. The walk into the motel. Marcus stared at them a long time. Set them aside. Then the emails. I watched his eyes move across the lines. Watched color drain from his face. Make sure the power of attorney is filed. Eugene won't notice. His lips moved. Reading to himself. Total should be around 310. Book the flights. One way. His hand began to shake. Then he reached Victor's email about Jamal. His body went rigid. Once you're out of the country for 30 days, the state initiates emergency custody. Either way, not our problem. Not our problem. Marcus whispered. She called Jamal. Not our problem. There's one more, I said. He found it. The line Leroy had highlighted. M is still in Tunica. Doesn't suspect anything. Let him rot down there. He read it 3 times. Let him rot. Written by the woman who kissed him goodnight, twice a week. Who told him everything was fine. Marcus set the papers down carefully. Stood. And walked to the window. His back to me. Shoulders rising and falling too fast. 5 years. He said. 5 years in this box. For her. Because she said it was the only way. His voice cracked. The whole time, she was using me, planning to disappear with a man I've never heard of. Victor Salinas, I said. Real estate lawyer. Together at least a year. He pressed his forehead against the glass. She told me she loved me. Every visit. Held my hand and said we'd be together again someday. The right time was whenever the account hit 300,000, I said. Not cruel. Just true. He turned. His face had changed. Grief still there, but clarity growing beside it. The terrible clarity of seeing the full picture for the first time. What do I need to do? Testify. FBI financial crimes agent is ready. They need your testimony. The faked death. Raymond Gill. Vanessa's role. Everything. And if I testify, you'll serve time. You committed fraud. Let people believe you were dead for 5 years. I paused. But cooperate fully. Sentence gets reduced. Maybe 4 years instead of 12. 4 years. Testing the weight. Jamal will be 13 when you get out. Still your son. Still a chance to rebuild. I let that settle. But only if you help us stop Vanessa before Wednesday. What happens Wednesday? She closes on Dorothy's house. $220,000 into escrow. Victor moves it offshore. They fly to Costa Rica that afternoon. And Jamal comes home from school to an empty apartment. Marcus closed his eyes. I could see him calculating. 4 years against his son, walking into an empty home. 4 years against Dorothy's house, sold to a stranger. 4 years against everything he owed. I'll do it, he said. Whatever it takes. I nodded. No smile. No warmth. This was a transaction. Accountability exchanged for the chance to salvage something from the ashes. Get your things. We're driving to Memphis tonight. Tomorrow morning. FBI. He gathered what he had. A duffel bag. A phone. A jacket. 5 years of hiding, fit in a single bag. He looked around the trailer one last time. I'm not going to miss this place, he said. You shouldn't. We walked to my truck. Marcus climbed into the passenger seat. I pulled out of Delta Pines onto the county road. Highway 61 North. Memphis. 20 minutes of silence. The Delta scrolled past, flat and golden. Then Marcus spoke. Dad, I know I don't deserve to ask. But is Jamal okay? I thought about my grandson. His grin. His excitement over barbecue. The way he held my hand on the stairs. He's a good kid, I said. Smart. Kind. Asks about you. Thinks you're a hero. Marcus was quiet after that. When I glanced over, his face was turned toward the window. But the reflection showed tears running silent down his cheeks. I did not offer comfort. Could not. Not yet. But I kept driving north. And for the first time in 5 years, my son was beside me. Not the boy from the workshop. The man he had become. Broken and wrong and trying, maybe for the first time, to do something right. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. The FBI field office on Humphreys Boulevard was a squat brick building, with tinted windows, and an American flag snapping in the November wind. Leroy, Marcus, and I sat in a conference room on the second floor. A long table between us, and Special Agent Denise Holloway. Holloway was 43. Short natural hair. Sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a navy blazer, and no jewelry except a thin gold watch. She listened, the way Leroy listened, with her whole body. Without interrupting. Without the kind of expression that tells you what a person is thinking before they are ready to tell you themselves. We gave her everything. The footage. The bank records. The emails. The photos. The urn contents. Sealed in an evidence bag Leroy had brought. Marcus's testimony, recorded on a digital device while a court stenographer typed in the corner. Marcus told it all. The gambling debt. Vanessa's plan. Raymond Gill. The fake certificate. 5 years. In a trailer, while his mother died, and his father paid for a lie. He spoke for 40 minutes without stopping. His voice cracked twice, but he did not quit. When he finished, Holloway sat back in her chair and looked at the evidence spread across the table. Then she looked at me. Mr. Crawford, she said, you understand that if we proceed, your son will face federal charges. I understand, I said. And you're prepared for that. I'm prepared to protect my grandson. Holloway nodded. Then she laid out the plan. Wednesday morning, Vanessa and Victor had scheduled the closing at Pacific Title Company on Union Avenue for 9:30. They would sign the transfer documents. The buyer's funds would move into escrow. Victor would initiate the wire transfer to the Bahamas account from his laptop at the same meeting. Then, they would drive directly to the airport. We let them get to the signing table, Holloway said. We let them sit down. We let them pick up the pen. The moment either one of them signs a fraudulent document in the presence of a notary, using a forged power of attorney, we have them on multiple federal charges: forgery, wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft of real property. You wait until they sign? I asked. We wait until the pen touches paper, Holloway confirmed. That's when intent becomes action. That's when a plan becomes a crime in progress. And that's when we walk in. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Crawford, you will not be present at the initial arrest. We'll have you in a separate vehicle nearby. After the arrest, we'll bring you in. Your appearance will confirm for the record that the death was faked, and it will destroy any defense Vanessa tries to build about not knowing you were alive. Marcus nodded. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. My team will consist of 4 agents plus local police backup. Holloway continued. 2 inside the title company posing as employees. 2 outside. Your role, Mr. Crawford, she looked at me, is to stay in your vehicle until we give the all clear. Under no circumstances do you enter the building before we signal. Understood, I said. Though staying in the car, while my family's future was decided inside a building across the street, would be the hardest thing I had ever done. The meeting lasted another hour. Details. Timing. Contingencies. What if Vanessa did not show? What if Victor got spooked? What if the buyer canceled? Holloway had answers for everything. She was thorough in the way that good carpenters are thorough, measuring every angle before making a cut. By 11, it was done. We had a plan. Wednesday morning, 4 days away, Marcus stayed at my house. I put him in the spare bedroom upstairs, the room that used to be his when he was a boy. The same walls, the same window overlooking the backyard, and Dorothy's magnolia tree. He stood in that doorway for a long time, not moving, just looking at the room like it was a museum exhibit from another man's life. Get some sleep, I said. We've got a long few days ahead. He nodded but did not speak. I closed the door and left him there with whatever ghosts the room still held. Sunday afternoon, I drove to Elmwood Cemetery. The sky was low and gray, spitting the kind of fine rain that does not fall so much as hang in the air, like grief made visible. Dorothy's grave sat beneath a young dogwood tree at the edge of Section 14. Simple granite headstone. Her name, her dates, and beneath them, the words I had chosen. Beloved wife, beloved mother. Her heart was her home. I knelt on the wet grass and placed a bundle of white daisies against the stone. Wednesday, baby, I said. On Wednesday, I'm going to save your house and your grandson. Vanessa's not taking what you built. Not the house. Not Jamal. Not one more thing. The rain collected on the granite, ran down the letters of her name like tears. The stone was crying on her behalf. Marcus is home, I added. Upstairs in his old room. I don't know what to feel about that yet, but he's going to help me stop her. He's going to stand up for Jamal. Maybe that's enough for now. I stayed for 20 minutes. Did not say anything else. Just knelt there with my hand on the wet stone, feeling the cold of it against my palm. Solid. Real. Unlike so many other things. Monday passed slow as drying glue. Tuesday slower. I worked in the garage both days, sanding a cherry wood tabletop I had been commissioned to build for a woman on Peabody Avenue. The rhythm of sandpaper on grain kept my hands busy, kept my mind from spinning into places it could not afford to go. Marcus stayed upstairs mostly. I heard him pacing at night. Neither of us slept well. Tuesday evening, I called Cecilia. Asked if she could watch Jamal Wednesday morning. A doctor's appointment, I told her. Might take a few hours. Of course, she said. Bring him by at 7:30. I'll make pancakes. Thank you, Cecilia. Eugene. She paused. Whatever's happening, I'm glad you're handling it. Me too, I said, and hung up before my voice could betray what Wednesday really meant. That night I sat at the kitchen table after Marcus had gone upstairs. The house was quiet. Dorothy's clock ticking. The refrigerator humming. Tomorrow morning everything would change. Either Vanessa would be in handcuffs by noon, or she would be on a plane to Costa Rica and Dorothy's house would belong to a stranger. I looked at my hands on the table. Calloused, scarred. 67 years of work, written into every line. These hands had built cradles and coffins, tables and shelves, porches and cabinets. Tomorrow they would tear down the biggest lie ever constructed under my roof. I turned off the lights and went upstairs. Paused outside Marcus's door. No sound. Either sleeping or pretending to. I walked to my own room and lay down in the dark. 4 days had become 0. Morning was coming, and I was ready. Wednesday morning arrived like any other November day in Memphis' pale gray sky. Temperature hovering around 42 degrees. Thin frost clinging to the windshield of my truck. But nothing about this day was ordinary. I had waited 5 years, 59 envelopes, and 1 broken heart to reach this moment. At 7:15 I drove to 847 Carr Avenue. Jamal stood in the lobby wearing his blue backpack, school uniform pressed, shoes tied in double knots the way I taught him. He smiled wide when he saw me. Gap where his left canine used to be making him look younger than 9. "Grandpa, are we getting biscuits?" "Not today, buddy. Miss Cecilia's going to watch you this morning." I got an appointment. He didn't argue. He never argued. That boy had more grace in his little body than every adult who had wronged him combined. I walked him up to Cecilia's apartment on the 2nd floor, handed her his lunchbox, and squeezed his shoulder. "I'll pick you up at noon," I said. "We'll get catfish." Cecilia nodded. She knew. Not everything, but enough. Her eyes told me to be careful. I took the stairs down, each step lighter than the 52 I used to climb to Vanessa's door. By 8:45 I parked my truck on Union Avenue, 3 spaces east of Pacific Title Company. The office sat between a barber shop and a tax preparation storefront, its front window displaying a faded American flag and a neon notary public sign. I cut the engine and waited. Leroy's voice crackled through my phone at 8:51. Holloway's team in position. 2 agents inside dressed as office staff. 2 in a gray sedan behind you. Local PD on standby 2 blocks north. "Copy," I whispered, though my hands trembled against the steering wheel. At 9:12, a black Mercedes E-Class turned left off Union and slid into the handicapped space directly in front of the title office. Tennessee plate 4R7 MKV. Victor Salinas stepped out first, charcoal suit, burgundy tie, leather briefcase in his right hand. He rounded the car and opened the passenger door for Vanessa. She emerged in a cream silk blouse, gray pencil skirt, heels that clicked against the concrete like a metronome, counting down her final free minutes. Her hair was straightened, pulled back with a gold clip. She looked like a woman about to close on her future. In a way, she was. They entered Pacific Title at 9:14. Through the window, I watched them shake hands with a woman behind the desk, Sandra Elkins, the legitimate notary who had no idea what was about to unfold in her office. 9:20. My phone buzzed. "Leroy, Marcus is ready." Holloway gives the signal when the pen touches paper. I gripped the door handle but did not move. My job was to wait, to watch, to breathe. 9:27. Through the glass, I saw Sandra spread documents across the table. Victor opened his briefcase, produced a manila folder, slid 3 pages toward Vanessa. I knew what those pages contained. A forged power of attorney, bearing a signature that was supposed to be mine, granting Vanessa authority to sell the house at 1614 Evelyn Avenue for $220,000, a house my grandfather built in 1941, a house where Dorothy sang gospel in the kitchen every Sunday for 31 years. 9:29. Vanessa picked up a pen. Black ink. She leaned forward, touched the tip to the signature line. The front door of Pacific Title burst open. Two agents in navy windbreakers with yellow FBI letters flooded in from the back hallway. Agent Denise Holloway stepped through the front entrance. Badge raised. Voice slicing through the room like a table saw through pine. FBI. Nobody move. Hands where I can see them. Victor's briefcase hit the floor. Papers scattered. Sandra screamed and stumbled backward into a filing cabinet. Vanessa froze pen still between her fingers, ink dot bleeding into the paper like a period at the end of a very long sentence. Then the side door opened, and Marcus walked in. Vanessa's face drained of color. Her mouth opened before her brain could stop it. "You were supposed to stay hidden!" she screamed. Those 6 words confirmed everything. No lawyer could undo them. No excuse could repackage them. In one sentence, she admitted Marcus was alive. That she knew. That she orchestrated the concealment. Holloway moved fast. "Vanessa Crawford, you are under arrest for wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent." Victor tried to speak. "I want my attorney." "You are an attorney, Mr. Salinas," Holloway said flatly. "And you're going to need a very good one." 2 agents cuffed Vanessa's wrists behind her back. She twisted, eyes wild, finding me through the window. I had stepped out of the truck without realizing it. Standing on the sidewalk, hands at my sides. "You ruined everything," she spat. I walked 3 steps closer. Close enough for her to hear me clearly, but far enough that no agent would intervene. "No," I said. "You took a grieving old man's money. You let his wife die talking to a bag of sawdust. You planned to throw away his grandson like trash. I just picked up the pieces." They loaded her into a gray sedan. Victor went into the second vehicle. Marcus, hands cuffed in front as agreed, was led to a third car. He looked at me as he passed. Not with anger, not with pride, with something quieter. Shame, maybe, or gratitude. I wasn't sure yet which. By 941 Union Avenue was quiet again. Sandra Elkins sat on her office steps, hands shaking. A paramedic offering water. Holloway approached me, removed her sunglasses. "Mr. Crawford, we have everything we need. You can go home." Home. 1614 Evelyn Avenue. 3 generations of oak and sweat and love. Still mine. Still Jamal's. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Cecilia. Done. Picking Jamal up at noon. Catfish. As promised. Then I sat in my truck, turned the key, and for the first time in 5 years, I breathed without a weight on my chest. The Shelby County Criminal Justice Center rose 8 stories above 2nd Street like a concrete monument to consequence. I had driven past it 1,000 times in 67 years, hauling lumber down Poplar, picking up permits at City Hall, once bailing out my brother-in-law after a New Year's party in 1994. But I had never walked through its front doors as a witness. Never sat on a wooden bench, waiting for a bailiff to call my name. February 19th. 3 months after the arrest at Pacific Title, winter had loosened its grip on Memphis just enough to let a pale sun slip through the courthouse windows, painting gold rectangles on the marble floor. I wore my one good suit, navy blue, bought for Dorothy's funeral, dry cleaned once for this occasion. The tie was burgundy, the same one she picked for our 40th anniversary dinner. I figured she ought to be in that room somehow. Leroy sat beside me on the 3rd-floor bench, his knee bouncing the way it did when he was thinking too fast. He wore a charcoal sport coat, and his retired investigator faced calm eyes, jaw set, hands folded over a leather folder containing copies of every document we had gathered. 26 years of chasing fraud. And this was the one that mattered most to him. Marlene's ghost sat between us. Invisible but present. At 9:15, the bailiff opened the double doors of courtroom 3B. Crawford matter. All parties. The room was smaller than I expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights humming above, 12 chairs in the jury box filled with strangers who would decide how many years Vanessa and Victor would lose. Judge Patricia Owens presided, a silver-haired woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on her nose and a reputation, Leroy told me, for despising fraud. Vanessa sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, wrists unshackled for the proceeding but ankles chained beneath the table. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun, no gold clip, no cream blouse. 3 months in custody had carved shadows beneath her eyes. Victor Salinas sat beside her in a matching jumpsuit, his charcoal suit confidence replaced by the hollow stare of a man who knew his law license was already ash. The prosecution called me first. Assistant District Attorney Karen Liu approached the witness stand after I was sworn in, a woman in her 40s with sharp posture and a voice that carried without effort. She walked me through the timeline. March 2019. The death notification. The forged certificate from Raymond Gill. Dorothy's collapse. Her stroke. Her 3 days in the ICU whispering Marcus's name until her lips stopped moving. The $900 envelopes, 59 of them, totaling $53,100, each one carried up 52 stairs to a woman who smiled and never let me pass the threshold. Mr. Crawford, Lou said, can you describe the moment you realized your son was alive? I looked at the jury. 12 faces. Some young, some my age. One woman in the back row had her hand over her mouth before I even spoke. November 8th, I said. I was on the stairwell outside apartment 309. I heard my son laugh, a laugh I'd been hearing in my dreams for 5 years, except this time I was awake and standing 6 feet from the door. Lou introduced the security footage, the limping figure climbing stairs at 1:47 a.m., left foot dragging, left shoulder dropping. She played it twice. The jury watched in silence. Then came the urn. A photograph projected on a screen, the bronze vessel I built with my own hands, magnolia blossoms etched into the surface. Beside it, the evidence bag containing sawdust, sand, and river pebbles. Lou explained what should have been inside and what was. A juror in seat 4 closed his eyes and shook his head. Dorothy spoke to that urn every night for 6 months, I said. She believed her son was inside. She died believing it. The defense attorney, a public defender named Thomas Raines, cross-examined briefly. He suggested I had financial motive to fabricate. I told him my only motive was a 9-year-old boy who deserved to know the truth about every adult in his life, including me. Raines sat down. Marcus testified next. He entered from a side door in his own orange jumpsuit, thinner than tunica, clean-shaven now, his limp pronounced on the courtroom's hard floor. He confirmed the gambling debt, the $60,000 owed to coastal lenders, the arrangement with Vanessa to stage his death using Raymond Gill's forged paperwork. He confirmed he never knew Dorothy had died. When Lou asked him to describe learning the news, his voice broke. My father told me in a trailer that smelled like cigarettes and ramen, Marcus said. He told me my mother died talking to a bag of sawdust I put in an urn. I have to live with that for the rest of my life. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 11 minutes. Vanessa Crawford. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, identity theft, and elder financial abuse. Sentenced to 15 years. Federal facility. No parole eligibility for 7. Victor Salinas. Guilty conspiracy, forgery, money laundering, aiding and abetting. Sentenced to 8 years. Tennessee Bar Association revoked his license permanently. Marcus Crawford. Guilty insurance fraud, conspiracy. Sentenced to 4 years per his cooperation agreement. Eligible for parole in 2.5. Judge Owens addressed the courtroom before adjourning. This case represents a systematic exploitation of grief, trust, and familial duty. The court has no tolerance for those who weaponize love. I did not look at Vanessa as they led her away. I did not need to. Her face had already taken up too much space in my memory for 5 years. Instead, I looked at Leroy, who nodded once, the same nod he gave me the night we opened the urn. A nod that said, "It's done." Outside the courthouse, the February air hit my face. Cool and clean. Leroy lit a cigarette, his first in 3 years, and exhaled toward the sky. "Marlene would have liked today," he said quietly. "Dorothy too," I replied. We stood on the steps for a long moment, watching traffic move along 2nd Street, ordinary people driving to ordinary places. Then I checked my watch. 3:45. Jamal's school let out at 3:30. "I gotta go," I said. "Boys waiting." The first thing I did after the verdict was drive to Prescott Elementary on Poplar Avenue. 3:52 on the dashboard clock. The crossing guard, an older woman in a reflective vest, waved me through the pickup lane. I parked in the same spot. I always used 3rd from the end, beneath the oak tree that dropped acorns on my hood every October. Jamal came out at 3:55, backpack bouncing against his shoulders, shoes untied as usual. He spotted my truck and ran, not jogged, ran weaving between minivans and a school bus with the confidence of a boy who knew exactly where he belonged. He climbed into the passenger seat, tossed his backpack on the floor, and grinned. "Grandpa, can we get milkshakes?" "Yeah, buddy. We can get milkshakes." I pulled out of the lot and turned south on Poplar, heading toward the Dairy Queen on Lamar. The radio played something low, an old Al Green track Dorothy used to hum while folding laundry. I didn't change the station. "How was school?" I asked. "Good. Mrs. Patterson said my essay was the best one. I wrote about woodworking." My chest tightened. "What'd you say about it?" I said my grandpa builds things that last forever. Like our house. I kept my eyes on the road because if I looked at him I would cry. And 67-year-old men don't cry in Dairy Queen parking lots on Wednesday afternoons. Or maybe they do. Maybe they've earned it. That evening I sat on the porch at 1614 Evelyn Avenue, the house my grandfather laid the foundation for in 1941, the house my father added a 2nd floor to in 1963, the house I rewired and replumbed in 1991, the house Vanessa tried to sell for $220,000 to fund a flight to Costa Rica. The wood beneath my boots was white oak. I milled myself 15 years ago. Still solid. Still holding. Jamal sat beside me on the porch swing, cup of chocolate ice cream in his hands, legs swinging because they couldn't reach the ground yet. The streetlight on Evelyn Avenue flickered on as the sun dipped behind the roofline of Mrs. Henderson's place across the street. "Grandpa, yeah, is my dad ever coming home?" I had prepared for this question the way you prepare for a saw blade, knowing it will cut, hoping your hands are steady enough to guide it straight. The family court judge had granted me temporary custody 2 weeks after the arrest. Full adoption proceedings were scheduled for April. The court-appointed child psychologist, Dr. Vanessa Reeves. Different Vanessa. A kind one recommended honesty, delivered in portions a 9-year-old could carry. "Your dad made some mistakes," I said slowly. "Big ones. He's in a place right now where they help people think about their mistakes. He'll be there for a while. Like a timeout, like a very long timeout. Does he still love me? More than anything in this world, Jamal." He told me that himself. The boy nodded, scooped another spoonful of ice cream, and leaned his shoulder against my arm. He didn't ask anything else. 9 years old, and already wise enough to know that some answers arrive in pieces, like furniture assembled one joint at a time. The following Monday, I reopened the workshop behind the house. 22 years of sawdust embedded in the concrete floor. The smell hitting me like a time machine. The moment I slid the barn door open. White oak, red cedar, lacquer thinner, and the ghost of every project I ever built with my hands. The table saw sat where I left it. Blade guard dusty but intact. Band saw in the corner. Drill press by the window where morning light made the metal glow amber. I spent that first week cleaning. Replacing belts, oiling joints, sharpening blades. Jamal came after school every day, perching on the tall stool by the workbench, watching me calibrate the miter gauge. "Can I try?" he asked on Thursday, pointing at a scrap piece of poplar. I handed him safety glasses child-sized. ordered from Amazon 2 days prior because I knew he would ask. I guided his hands on the hand plane, showing him the angle, the pressure, the way grain talks to you if you listen. Feel that, I said? Smooth with the grain. Never fight the wood. His first shaving curled off the board like a ribbon, paper thin and perfect. He held it up to the light and laughed a bright, clean sound that filled the workshop the way Dorothy's singing once filled the kitchen. By March, I had taken on 3 small jobs: a bookshelf for the church, a porch railing for Mrs. Robinson, her second one. I built the first in task 3, and a custom cutting board for the new restaurant on Cooper Street. Word spread. Eugene Crawford was back in business. But the workshop wasn't just for paying clients. Every Saturday morning from 9 to noon, I opened the doors to neighborhood kids, Jamal's classmates. A few teenagers from the community center on Dunlap, one quiet 14-year-old named Deshawn, who reminded me of Marcus at that age, but with steadier hands and softer eyes. I taught them to measure twice, cut once. Taught them that building something with your hands gives you a dignity no one can forge, steal, or sign away. I called it Crawford & Sons Woodworking School. The sign hung above the barn door, hand-carved walnut, letters routed with a 1/4-inch bit, finished in 3 coats of marine spar varnish. Leroy helped me mount it on a Saturday afternoon, holding the level while I drove the lag bolts. Sons, plural? He asked, eyebrow raised. Every kid who walks through that door, I said. At night, after Jamal brushed his teeth and climbed into the twin bed in what used to be Marcus's room, I sat in Dorothy's chair by the window. The urn was gone. I buried the bronze shell beside her headstone at Elmwood Cemetery. Empty now. Its purpose transformed from a vessel of lies into a marker of truth. In its place on the white oak shelf sat a framed photograph. Dorothy, Marcus, Jamal, and me. Thanksgiving, 2017. The last photo before everything broke. I talk to her sometimes. Not to an urn, to the air, to the memory. We're okay, Dot, I whispered. The house is standing. The boy is safe. And I'm building again. The streetlight on Evelyn Avenue hummed outside the window. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and went quiet. Memphis settled into its nighttime rhythm: crickets, distant trains on the Southern Line, the low murmur of a city that never fully sleeps. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 5 years, I did not dream of envelopes. April 14th, a Monday. Memphis had already surrendered to spring azaleas, exploding pink and white along every fence on Evelyn Avenue. Dogwood blossoms drifting across sidewalks like confetti. Nobody swept up. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass. And the magnolia tree in Mrs. Henderson's yard, its blooms fat and cream-colored. Releasing that scent, Dorothy always said, reminded her of her grandmother's perfume. I woke at 5:45, same as every morning since the trial. Coffee first black. 2 scoops. The old percolator gurgling on the counter like it had since 1987. Then I stood at the kitchen window watching light crawl over the backyard, touching the workshop roof, sliding down the walnut sign. Crawford & Sons Woodworking School. 3 coats of marine varnish caught the dawn and threw it back golden. Today was different, though. Today I had court. Jamal's adoption hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock at Shelby County Juvenile Court on Adams Avenue. I had pressed my Navy suit the night before. Same suit. Same burgundy tie. Dorothy's funeral, the criminal trial. And now this. 3 occasions. The suit had seen grief, justice, and now something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Jamal came downstairs at 6:30. School clothes on, even though I told him twice he didn't have school today. White polo, khaki pants, sneakers with the left lace already loosening. Why am I dressed up if there's no school? He asked, sliding into his chair at the kitchen table. Because today a judge is going to ask you a question, and you should look sharp when you answer. What question? She's going to ask if you want to live here. With me. Permanently. He looked at me like I had asked whether the sky was blue. I already live here, Grandpa. I know. But today we make it official. On paper. So nobody can ever change it. He chewed his toast, thought for a moment, then said, "Can I bring my plane?" The plane was a model he built in the workshop 2 weeks ago, a small biplane carved from poplar, wings sanded to paper-thin edges, painted red with a white stripe. His first solo project, he carried it everywhere like a talisman. "Yeah, buddy. Bring your plane." Leroy picked us up at 9:15 in his Buick. He wore his charcoal sport coat and a tie I had never seen, dark green with tiny gold diamonds. He looked like a man attending a graduation, which in some way he was. "Looking sharp, young man," Leroy said to Jamal in the rearview mirror. "Thank you, Mr. Leroy. Grandpa said I have to look sharp for the judge." "Your grandpa's a wise man." The drive to Adams Avenue took 12 minutes. I spent every one of them staring out the window at Memphis, rolling by the barber shop on Madison where I got my first haircut at age 6, the corner of Cleveland and Poplar, where Dorothy and I had our first date, at a diner that became a phone store, that became a nail salon. A city built on layers, same as a family. Courtroom 2. A was smaller than 3. B, warmer, designed for families rather than criminals. No jury box. Just a judge's bench, 2 tables, a row of chairs, and a large window letting in April light. Judge Carolyn Myers presided, younger than Owens, maybe 50, with kind eyes behind rectangular glasses and a voice that sounded like a kindergarten teacher who happened to carry a gavel. Dr. Vanessa Reeves submitted her psychological evaluation. Jamal was thriving, emotionally secure, deeply bonded with Eugene, showing no signs of trauma regression since the transition. His school grades had improved, reading up 2 levels. Math at grade standard. Social interactions healthy and age-appropriate. The caseworker, Teresa Hollins, confirmed 16 weeks of home visits. House clean, refrigerator stocked, bedroom personalized with Jamal's drawings and the model biplane on his nightstand. Workshop supervised, safety protocols followed. Neighborhood support evident. Then Judge Myers turned to Jamal. "Jamal, can you come up here for a moment?" He walked to the front of the courtroom clutching his red biplane, stood straight, and looked up at the judge without flinching. "Jamal, do you know why we're here today?" "Yes, ma'am." "So I can stay with my grandpa forever." "And is that what you want?" "Yes, ma'am. He teaches me to build things. He says if you can build something with your hands, nobody can take it away from you." Judge Myers smiled. Not a professional smile. A real one. The kind that crinkles the corners of your eyes. "I think your grandpa is right," she said. She signed the order at 10:27. 1 document. 1 signature. No forgery. No fraud. No lie. Just ink on paper, making true what had already been true in every way that mattered. Outside the courthouse, Leroy shook my hand, then pulled me into a hug, the first in our 30-year friendship. His coat smelled like coffee and Old Spice. "Marlene would have baked a cake," he said. "Dorothy would have made 2, I replied. Jamal tugged my sleeve. "Grandpa, can we go to the workshop? I want to start a new project." "What do you want to build?" "A birdhouse. For the magnolia tree." We drove home on Adams, turned south on Danny Thomas, then east on Poplar, the long way, the scenic way, past the old diner corner and the barber shop and the church where Dorothy and I were married in 1986. Memphis in April looks like a promise someone finally decided to keep. That evening, after the birdhouse walls were cut and the roof pieces clamped for glue-up, after Jamal fell asleep on the couch with sawdust in his hair and the red biplane on his chest, I sat at Dorothy's desk in the bedroom. I opened the top drawer and pulled out an envelope, white, standard, the same kind I used for 59 payments to Vanessa. But this one was different. This one was addressed to Marcus, care of the Federal Correctional Institution in Forest City, Arkansas. Inside I placed a single photograph. Jamal in the workshop, safety glasses on, holding up his first poplar shaving, grinning at the camera. On the back of the photo I wrote, "He's building things that last. When you come home, I'll teach you both." I sealed the envelope, placed a stamp in the corner, and set it by the front door for tomorrow's mail. The last envelope I would ever prepare for someone in this family. Not a payment. Not a debt. Not an obligation dressed in guilt. A bridge. I turned off the porch light. Checked the lock, one deadbolt, solid brass. Installed it myself in 1992 and walked upstairs. The house creaked in its familiar language. Third step groaned left. Seventh step popped center. Landing board sighed like it was glad to have someone home. Jamal's room glowed with the nightlight. He still needed a small amber moon plugged into the outlet by his bed. I pulled his blanket up, tucked the biplane beside his pillow, and stood there for a moment listening to him breathe. 67 years old, 3 generations of this house. One grandson sleeping safe under a roof nobody could sell, forge, or steal. We made it, Dot. I whispered to the dark hallway. We made it.